Okay, well, this will be part two now as we extend um, our simple box setup with a simple spotlight on a cube to create some glass materials out of the cube. And it will also add in a sphere here. When we left off, we were looking through the camera view, and we get to the camera view by hitting number 0 on your numpad. And to get out of this view, I also hit, let me click on here, number 0 to get out of that same view. Okay. I'm going to add a sphere in here. So we have two objects. So I'm just orbiting around and putting my left clicking to put my 3D cursor about here. And we'll go Shift A and add a mesh UV sphere. And before I touch it or do anything, let's see, I'm going to leave it at 32 segments, but I'm going to click Smooth Shading right here and be very simple about that. So we're in object mode right now, and let me just pan down here and move in. And I have a sphere and a cube sitting on the plane. So let me hit number 1, and this is front ortho, and pull that in and down just to set it right on the bottom of our box here, and orbit around. Let's see, I can move that in a little closer. Now I'll decide where that's going to go after I look through the camera. They make this a little bigger too, so I'm going to, since it's selected, I'm going to hit the letter S and just drag my mouse a little bit and create a bigger sphere. Okay. And not let it intersect for now the cube. Okay, so new option, alert. We're going to create, instead of a diffuse white ball, let's create a glass sphere. So come over here, and if you need to pull out your menu a bit to get to this sphere right here next to the triangle. Also, I wanted to point out that we are in cycles render. So I'm going to click that, and then I want to click new, and instead of a diffuse material, I want to click glass right here. And I'm going to keep the roughness at 0 so it's nice and transparent. And for the color, let's see, I'll give it a tiny bit of, very small amount of green, so it kind of looks like regular kind of plate glass. So that's it for that one, and let me make this into a glass cube as well. So I just clicked on it, click Use Nodes, click Surface, and choose Glass. And again, I click on the color, which is currently white, and I'm going to create a little yellow color out of that. And very small amount. Again, give it a realistic look. And then down here next to object mode, I'm going to click rendered and just take a peek at how this is currently looking. I'm going to up the light a little bit. So I'm going to click on the lamp in the outliner. Put the strength up. Let's see what 4000 looks like. Enter. And that's pretty good. Now if I were to go and do a render, I'm going to click the camera to get into the render menu. And we still have sampling open from our last video. If it's not, you can just toggle it open. The sample amount is 128 here, and because it's glass and there's a lot more going on, I'm going to up this 250. And Notice how there's these white speckles around here, even though we're in a very coarse preview mode. I know because there's glass involved now that when we render this, we're likely to have these what are called fireflies show up. So what I'm going to do is set down here under settings, clamp indirect to 0.1, or is that going to be, I'm sorry, make it 1. Yeah. Clamp indirect to 1, not 0.1. And for the sake of the video, for me to render it sooner, although I'm going to pause the video anyway, I'm going to decrease the size back down to 50%. Although for you, I'd keep it at 100%, so you'll have a nice full HD image for your portfolio. And now let's just pan around and get an interesting point of view here. Maybe the world, instead of it being a gray, let's make that solid black. And I'm going to click this sphere right here, and that's the world button. And when I click the color, I can drag the value scale on the far right down to solid black. Okay, and in terms of the light, I think if I illuminate more of the box here, I mean it's very dramatic with this spotlight, but if I spread the light out a bit more, I'll get more reflections coming through the glass and so on. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back to the lamp here, click on the lamp, and instead of a spotlight, I'm going to choose sunlight. And notice at 4,000 how completely blown out this is. Make the size 1, enter, and reduce the strength down. Let's try 100 and see what that does. And that's still too much. How about 10? Enter. 5, enter. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. We've got more light bouncing around. Let's see if I take that to 0.1, see if I get more of a point source of light. So what's happened is, because of the position of the lamp, with it a little less spread out, it's not hitting this back wall of the box. So back up to 1 we go, enter. And maybe make that 7. So there's a lot of trial and error with this to sort of get the effect that you want. Now I'm going to hit numpad 0 and then pan and zoom and orbit and do what I need to do to set this up kind of where I want it. Let me shift. Oops, excuse me. Right now, the computer is not cooperating because it's still trying to render. It's working very hard. So I'm going to come back to solid mode here so I can move a little easier in real time. With all the glass and reflections and whatnot, it was having a hard time moving for me. If you want to just double check your lighting, we can now come back into rendered and the viewport shading and see how that's looking. Okay, fine. So I'm going to hit F12 and start the render here, and let me pause the video. Okay, so here we have it. Had I used a modifier to subdivide the sphere, I could have avoided some of these little bumps, but that's okay for now. So that's basically it. Make sure you hit F3 on your keyboard in order to save the picture. Okay, and name it project 2.1. save as image, as a ping, and put that in your Google Drive. And now after the render, hit escape, and what I'd like you to do at this point is to experiment with a few different points of view, and some lighting effects also, if you want to go back and do another. Let me hit F12 here. Play with the spotlight for drama, etc. Let me pause this too to show you this, how it's going to end up. That would be good. I'd like you to put away maybe 5 or 6 images in your portfolio. And okay, this is how that rendered out. It took another 5 minutes, and I love the refraction through the cube, how the sphere breaks up here, and the lines from the edges of the box showing up reflected here. We see reflection of the light bouncing around on this sphere. So have fun with this, and see you in the next video.